Hi everyone, my name is Michele Ellicks and I work for the Registry of Motor Vehicles, and I'd like to thank you for joining me today to learn more about the Real ID. A special thank you to the Eastham Council on Aging as well as Eastham Town Hall's Video Services Department. So let's learn about the Real ID. What is the Real ID? It's actually a federally compliant credential, and it will be required on October 1st of the year 2021 in order to board an airplane to fly within the U.S., but also in order to enter secure federal office buildings. So again, the date to keep in mind is October 1st, 2021, because if you do plan on flying within the United States on that day or beyond, or if you do have business in a secure federal office building, you will need to show a Real ID in order to gain entry. If you do not have a Real ID, there are a couple of other documents that security will accept instead of a Real ID. So it's important to keep in mind that if you have a valid passport, well, that's a document that can be shown and would allow you to gain entry into a federal office building or to board an airplane. A military ID as well is considered to be a federally compliant credential. Much like the Real ID, it will allow you to fly within the United States on or beyond October 1st, 2021, or gain entry into a secure federal office building. So again, we need to keep in mind that not everyone will need to have a Real ID. It's really the folks who plan to fly within the United States or the folks that have business going into federal office buildings, federal courthouses, the larger Social Security offices, those types of things. So the choice is yours depending on what your plans are, starting October 1st of the year 2021. Information about the Real ID can be found on our website, and we will show you in this program documents that you will need to know of and be aware of. But information can be found at mass.gov/ID if you want to learn more about the Real ID. So you may be wondering, what is the difference between a Real ID and a standard ID? The difference is the Real ID has a star in the top right-hand corner of your credential. And when I talk about credential, I'm referring to either a driver's license or a Massachusetts ID card. So whatever you have in your wallet, whether it's a driver's license or an ID card, the Registry of Motor Vehicles and participating AAA offices can turn that credential into a Real ID when you come in to renew. So the star in the top right-hand corner of your driver's license means that it is a federally compliant credential. If you have a driver's license or a Massachusetts ID card that has no star in the top right-hand corner, obviously, that is not a federally compliant credential, and it does say not a federal ID. So it means that you won't be able to gain entry into a secure federal office building or board an airplane if you do not have the star in the top right-hand corner of your license or your ID card. So as I said, the choice is yours. So why are we even talking about the Real ID? Some of you may know that the Real ID is the result of 9/11. When 9/11 happened, Congress got together and created the Homeland Security Act. And then, years later, in 2005, Congress created the Real ID Act. And that is why we're talking about the Real ID. So when can you get a Real ID? A Real ID requires you to come in person to a Registry of Motor Vehicles service center or to a AAA office. If you are a AAA member, you can renew your driver's license or renew your ID card, and at that time, turn it into a real ID. So you can do that at the Registry of Motor Vehicles or at AAA. Now, we are doing things a little bit differently at the registry because of the pandemic. You cannot just walk in to a Registry of Motor Vehicles at this time. You must make an appointment. You must make a reservation to make an appointment in order to go to the Registry of Motor Vehicles. You must make a reservation to make an appointment to go to AAA. So again, reservations for appointments at the registry can be made on our website, which is mass.gov/RMV. Or you can make an appointment at AAA at AAA.com/appointment. So as I mentioned, getting a real ID does require an in-person visit. So what is going to be needed? You may have heard that there are certain documents required in order to obtain a real ID. And the Registry of Motor Vehicles has a wonderful checklist online, and I encourage all of you to get a hold of that checklist. As part of this program, we will also send documents as a handout or as an attachment to anybody who needs it. So the checklist will help you get organized and get prepared for your visit to the Registry of Motor Vehicles. Now, keep in mind, everything is detailed on this checklist. It's 2 pages of information. I want to emphasize that whatever document you bring to us must be on this checklist. You cannot just decide whatever documents you have in the house and bring those with you. No, we are following the Real ID Act requirements, which are very strict in terms of the documentation that the registry or AAA can accept. So please keep in mind, we cannot accept photocopied documents. We cannot accept photocopied documents. Also keep in mind that we are not allowed to accept laminated documents. So do not bring photocopies and do not bring laminated documents. You will be turned away. Why is that? Because the Real ID Act requires us at the registry and our staff at AAA to scan in whatever document you give to us. So obviously, a photocopy or a laminated document does not scan. So we need original documents only. So the first step in getting a real ID, the document, there are 3 categories that you need to comply with. So you will need to bring 1 document proving lawful presence. There are 11 documents that you can choose from in order to prove lawful presence. I won't go through the entire list, but some examples include a U.S. birth certificate, must be an original. It must have been issued by a municipality. We cannot accept hospital birth records. We cannot accept baptismal certificates. So if you're going to use your birth certificate to prove lawful presence, it must be the original. If not the original, we can accept a certified version of your birth certificate, but it must have the raised seal and it must have a serial number. So if you cannot find your birth certificate, you could use your passport instead. So if you have a passport, make sure that it is valid. If it is valid, we can accept that as proof of lawful presence. Other documents include employment authorization documents, a foreign passport with a valid U.S. visa affixed to it, a certificate of citizenship, a certificate of naturalization, a permanent resident card, otherwise known as a green card. So again, those are just a few items on the list that a customer can choose from and can bring in with them in order to prove lawful presence. Now, With the Real ID, your name must match the name that appears on your lawful presence document in order for you to be eligible for the Real ID. So if you hand the registry a birth certificate with a maiden name, let's say, on that birth certificate, the only way you'll be able to obtain the Real ID is by providing proof, legal proof that you changed your name legally. So we would need to see a marriage certificate, or maybe we would need to see a divorce decree or a court document. So again, the checklist really spells everything out. But if your lawful presence document shows a different name from your current name, in order to obtain the Real ID, you will need to have proof that you legally changed your name. That's the first step, lawful presence. The second step is proving Social Security number. In order to obtain a Real ID, you need to bring in a document that proves your Social Security number. What can we accept? We can accept a Social Security card, not laminated. We can accept a W-2 form. We can accept a pay stub or a 1099. So there are documents to choose from, and you will see when you look at that checklist that there are 6 documents to choose from in order to prove Social Security number. Again, make sure whatever document you bring in is an original. It is not laminated, and it shows all 9 digits of your Social Security number. That's important. In order to prove Social Security number, the document, the W-2 or the pay stub or the 1099, or of course your Social Security card, must show all 9 digits of your Social Security number. So the final step in obtaining a Real ID is you need to bring in 2 documents proving Massachusetts residency. The document that you use to prove Mass residency must show your name and your residential address. We are not allowed to accept a document showing a post office box, nor are we allowed to accept a document showing mailed to you in care of someone else. So the document that we need to see in order to prove Mass residency must show your name and your residential address. So what are some examples of documents that prove Mass residency? Your current valid driver's license. As long as your license has not expired, you show us that, and that's a document that proves Mass residency. Your current Massachusetts ID card. So if you have an ID card and it has not expired, that's a document that you can use to prove Mass residency. And in order to get the Real ID, you need 1 more document proving Mass residency. So in addition to either your license or your ID card, you could use a current bill, a bill dated within 60 days of your visit to the registry, a utility bill, a credit card statement, a cell phone bill, a bank account statement, savings or checking, a rental agreement, a mortgage statement. So those are just a few examples of the documents that we can accept from a person to prove Mass residency. So, and that is it. So in recapping, what documents do you need? You need 1 document proving lawful presence. Depending on what that document proving lawful presence states in terms of your name, you might need proof of legal name change. You will need to bring in 1 document proving Social Security number. And last but not least, you will need 2 documents proving Mass residency. Now, finally, what does a Real ID cost? Well, if you obtain the Real ID during your renewal phase of your driver's license or ID card, it only costs the renewal fee. So again, if you're eligible to renew, which means your license is due to expire within the coming year. So actually in Massachusetts, you have the ability to renew your license or ID card 364 days prior to the expiration date on your license or ID. So that's your renewal phase. You come in to see us during your renewal phase, you pay the renewal fee. We will turn that into a real ID for no additional cost if you're doing that transaction during your renewal phase, which, as I said, is 1 year prior to the expiration date. A renewal cost for a license costs $50. The renewal fee for an ID card costs $25. So those are the renewal fees. Let's say your license does not expire for maybe a couple of years from now. In that case, you're not eligible to renew because your license doesn't expire within the coming year. It expires 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road. But if you want the real ID, you can come in and replace what you currently have. We're not going to add any time to that because you're not eligible to renew. But if you come in to do a replacement because you're not eligible to renew, that's a $25 fee. It's a replacement fee. And we can turn your current driver's license or ID card into a real ID. Even though you're not eligible to renew, we can replace it. We will not change the expiration date. If you're replacing and not renewing, we cannot add any time to that license. It's just a replacement, but we can certainly put the star on it if you provide all of your documents. So to learn more, as I said, you can certainly go to our website, which is mass.gov/RMV, to learn the specifics about the federally compliant requirements and the federally compliant credential and the history of the Real ID. You would go to mass.gov/ID. I thank you for your time and your participation, and I wish you safe travels.